Welcome to this webinar on mental health and resilience during COVID-19. My name is Vicki Enns, and I am a trainer and the clinical director of Crisis and Trauma Resource Institute. In this webinar, I would like to explore the impact of COVID-19 on our mental health. I also want to identify areas of resilience and steps we can take to be promoting our own resilience. I also want to describe concrete steps toward greater mental wellness and overall health. I would encourage you to watch this webinar at the pace that is right for you. I will be discussing many possible strategies, so you may want to pause the video at times or watch it in segments or more than once. Find the pace that feels helpful for you. We are all highly aware of how strange and unprecedented this time feels to all be enduring this global pandemic. It is unique for us as a whole human race to be experiencing such similar struggle and impact all at the same time. I want to highlight three aspects of our shared experience just to help us understand what we all may be feeling. Everywhere, people are experiencing heightened fear and anxiety. This can both be comforting as we feel united in this struggle, and it can also add to the scale of the worry. Of course, we are all hearing the guidance to stay physically separate from one another, and this reality and the feeling of social disconnection and the very real isolation that many people are experiencing is the center of both the cause of much distress, while it is also the center of our joint solution. And of course, this is all about the threat of the escalation of the COVID-19 virus. We learn more and more about it every day. However, the situation is also filled with unknowns, and this naturally blankets the whole population in a need to pay attention to survive the threat. So this is why we wanted to offer this webinar, that this is a conversation that is relevant for all of us. And I hope to offer some understanding, as well as many concrete steps that we can each take to protect and buffer our mental and emotional health, while we are also changing our lives to protect our physical health. As we think about how this situation is affecting our health overall, I want to take a moment to expand our concept of health, recognizing that health will mean different things to different people. Individually, we can consider what is happening within our bodies and minds, and this inevitably is connected to our closest relationships, our level of stress, and how we cope. This both influences and is influenced by those closest to us. We are relational beings, and so we are always impacted by and impact those around us. Health is not just one thing. All areas of our well-being are interrelated. So it is important in this pandemic that we are considering, of course, our physical health and also our mental, emotional, and spiritual health. The vast reach of this pandemic is a reminder and perhaps a wake-up to all of us of how interconnected we all are. As we consider how best to take care of ourselves, we are also taking care of each other, our neighbors, the shaping of our global society, and indeed the very land we are on. Nature is our home, and we need to take care of it too, as it is a key part of where we can draw sustenance and healing from. Let's look a little more closely at the shared impacts I mentioned that we are all potentially feeling to help us understand what might be common and to give some language to what people may be experiencing. Firstly, heightened anxiety and fear. These are expected and understandable emotions and states that we all may be feeling. Usually when I talk about anxiety, I talk about how it is pulling us into the future or reminding us of the past. The unique thing today is that we also have a very real present-day threat that is understandably setting off fear for people, and this is an appropriate feeling to be having. The situation is ongoing and constantly changing, requiring us to change our lives in vast ways to adapt. Change itself is always stressful, even when it's towards a positive end. I've said to many people lately that I'm noticing how stress and change fatigued I'm feeling. So we may find ourselves or see other people coping or reacting in ways that seem a little strange or sometimes intense. I want to encourage us all to be realistic and compassionate with ourselves and with others, that the anxiety and fear we may be feeling is very normal. It's very common that it may come in waves, or we might have sudden bouts where it gets hold of us and then it may ebb. We can work to manage it so that we can turn the volume back down when it does get bigger. As universal as this experience is, of course, we each will also have our own unique experiences. We may each be coming into this time with different things that are already going on in our lives. We have different levels of health in the area of physical, mental, and relational health. The impact of stress can typically happen in layers. So as we feel the impact of current day stress, fear, or anxiety, for those of us who maybe already have patterns of anxiety, depression, or trauma reactions from past experiences, we may notice there are times that these patterns are coming to the fore, and they may feel a bit stronger at times. Using tools that you've already learned to cope and to take care of yourself will be very important during this time. Many people may be noticing new patterns of stress, disruptions to sleep, spikes of anxiety at random times, or different moods that just may come and go. We all have our habits of coping, and some may really be helping us at this time, and some may create additional stresses or challenges for ourselves or those around us if we get out of balance. With stress, typically comes more rigidity in all areas of who we are, so we become more prone to defensiveness, reactivity, and impatience, and this can impact our relationships. With awareness of this and intention, we can slow these impacts down somewhat and be thoughtful and intentional of taking steps to buffer them. The second shared impact I mentioned is increased disconnection and isolation. Central to the impact of and response to this current pandemic is our need to create physical distance from each other. There are some key elements of this that I think it is helpful for us to be aware of, to both watch for and understand the effect, and to be mindful of so we can mitigate them. We are meant to be in connection, so even the idea of being more socially isolated and disconnected naturally creates a stress response. When my local community began giving guidelines for physical distancing and staying home, I really noticed in myself, and I heard from friends and neighbors and clients, just an immediate tension get bigger about this and a craving for contact before we had even really started. Without awareness of this natural response, the combination of needing to create more physical distance with the fear that it can generate can lead to a nervousness about others, especially those that perhaps we know less or are less close to. We just don't know who all may be impacted by COVID-19, so we are automatically carrying the question of, are you safe, into every interaction. This is understandable and so important we're aware of it, so it doesn't slip into negative othering or blaming or dividing us into us and them groups as a form of self-protection, which can easily happen. With this awareness comes greater understanding and compassion, both for these reactions in ourselves and for other people. Remember that because we are so relational, we pick up on each other's states, so we can feel each other's stress. This is part of our empathy, and it can either build our anxiety, or with awareness, we can use it to build our compassion and support of one another. The third shared aspect of this experience is the ongoing threat of the unknown. We are all equipped with a survival instinct to help us respond and deal with threat. When we feel fear, this is our instinct trying to protect us. This can show up and influence all parts of our overall health. In response to this, you may be feeling various things. Physiologically, we might feel physical responses such as bracing in our body or increased tension or even pain. Emotionally, you may feel suddenly flooded or overwhelmed with different emotions. This may come in the form of helplessness, fear, perhaps sadness, or it might be in the direction of frustration and anger. You might notice it mentally. Your thoughts might get very busy and scattered, trying to make sense or to constantly problem solve. Or it's normal for people to get caught up in loops of worry or going into catastrophic beliefs or worrying about the worst case scenario. Our thoughts also might be taking us away, trying to avoid or find escape. And spiritually, we may think of this as noticing perhaps our overall just sense of security, meaning, and purpose might become shifted or just disoriented. As our day-to-day lives feel so different, our identity may also feel in question, our sense of purpose or connection to something meaningful that is larger than just ourselves. There is important positive power in being able to recognize fear when it shows up, so it doesn't just take over. We can observe it, get to know it, and this can shift our relationship with it. Some of the common ways that we tend to react to the unknown that may be showing up for people is that we are meaning makers. We want to understand and know what's going to happen. We naturally crave information. Of course, today we can access news and information and hear people talk about the current situation literally 24 hours a day, every day. So although this is an amazing resource, it can also push us very out of balance. One of the hardest things to feel and endure is an experience of helplessness. It is natural that we want to be able to do something and gain control over the situation. As we follow the guidance of our leaders, we are moving in that direction. However, of course, we are all tolerating a great deal of unknown and powerlessness. One of the most common outcomes of anxiety is an urge to avoid the threat. So it is expected to see this shaping many reactions and behaviors. This may at times look or sound like people denying the reality or not taking things seriously, as it can take some time for the full weight of a situation to sink in. Sometimes people respond in the other direction and try to take extra measures to protect themselves or their family, and lives may shrink and become even more isolated than perhaps is even necessary. One of the biggest challenges of this current situation is trying to find some sort of balance between these tensions. The good news is that the same part of us that wants to be active and solve this problem and survive also forms the basis of our resilience and strength that will indeed help us persevere. I really believe that resilience is made up of a bunch of smaller ingredients that we each have within us. It isn't just a static quality that a person either has or doesn't have. We all have parts of the solution, and collectively we help each other rise up when we each access our unique strengths and talents, whatever they are. It is through our openness to our vulnerability and by accessing our creativity to keep going that we collectively live into the courage through moment-by-moment actions of coping and responding. Our resilience grows as we move through such a difficult time. It may be filled with ups and downs and much that we cannot control. However, we can try to focus our efforts to help move us in the direction of greater resilience and overall health. So let's shift to talk about specific ways that we can all do this. I hope you will find some steps that resonate for you and that you can share with those you care about. When faced with such uncertainty, focusing our attention toward what is possible for us to have choice about becomes an important way that we create the possibility in our bodies, our minds, emotions, and our relationships to stay as balanced as possible. Each of us will have different choices that we're needing to navigate in our current lives. So thoughtfully considering what are the areas in which you actually do have some choice right now. Just as a quick example, choosing some boundaries and balance for how much sustained attention you spend on the pandemic might be one such choice. Stay informed so you can properly do your part and take care of yourself, your family, and your community, and also step out of the fear and stress sometimes to engage with other parts of life. Identifying what information you need to help you sort out just the next decision that you need to make. Taking things one at a time. There are many tangible ways that we can support our own mental and emotional health to help us be in the best possible state to move through this time. So let's look at some additional strategies to help with this. When we feel emotionally and mentally stressed, one way we can support ourselves is by ensuring we are tending to our foundation of basic physical needs as best we can. Making sure you eat regularly, drink water, and get regular rest are basics that often will feel disrupted when we're under stress. To the best of your ability, retaining some routine and regularity to these activities of daily living support your whole nervous system to stay as grounded as possible. Anxiety brings a sense of urgency and tension, and we can feel this in our bodies. We might not be able to remove the source of the anxiety, but we can work to slow down our response to it. Tune into the sensations of your body. Use your senses, what you see, hear, smell, tangibly feel, to all help you stay connected to dealing with just this moment, rather than focusing too much on a future that is unknown. If we regulate and settle our body, it helps our emotions come down in intensity and helps us move through. I want us to do an activity, just as a quick example of this, of just grounding in our bodies. So even right now, as you're listening, just invite you to notice where you're seated or standing and just really feel the support underneath you. Perhaps it's a chair under your legs or the back of a chair or a wall that you're leaning against. Perhaps it's the floor underneath your feet. And just tune into the sensation of that for a moment. Perhaps allowing your body to sink into it just a little bit more. You might hold something in your hand, a rock, a cup, or just feel a surface close by, and just notice the sensation. If it's solid or smooth, if it's soft, just really bring your attention to what your senses are telling you right in this moment. You might tune in again to your seat or how you're standing, and even rock back and forth a little bit just to find your center. Find that spot where you feel really well balanced, where you can sit well supported. You can sit or stand tall and breathe most easily. In this way, you're finding that centered or grounded posture that just helps support your whole body and your mind and your emotions. And finally, I'd invite you to bring your attention, send it down to your feet, if you can. And if you can, sense into your feet and your toes. You might think about noticing how you can feel into the four corners of your feet, can feel the whole base, and literally sense into the ground or the earth underneath you, and this sense of just feeling really connected to that solidity. That is one simple way to just tune into our body in the present, and it cues our whole mind and body to settle just for a few moments. Many of you are likely familiar with using breath to help settle stress and anxiety. Our breath is automatically linked with our body state, and by settling and slowing our breath down, it helps support our body and mind to follow suit and become less stressed. Simply by slowing down your breath and ensuring that you're taking a long, slow exhale is one way to check in and regulate your breath. Like the image you see on the screen, you can guide children or yourselves to imagine or to use an activity like blowing bubbles as a familiar guide to help us think about this. So even right now, let's try this. I'll invite you simply, first of all, just to notice your breath. Just notice you are breathing. You don't have to try to change it. Just sense into it, perhaps in your nose or in your chest. Maybe you just have a general sense of your body breathing. See if you can relax your shoulders and just tune into your breath for a moment. If it's uncomfortable, then just let your attention move back to your senses and your external surroundings. If you care to, and it's comfortable to focus on your breath, you might see what it's like to intentionally slow down and lengthen your breath. So taking a little bit of a longer inhale and a nice long slow exhale, And you might imagine as if you were blowing a nice big bubble. And you might notice how your body will naturally take a long breath in afterward, and just allowing your breath to settle in its natural rhythm. So just regularly tuning into our breath and using a simple exercise like this or other breathing exercises really supports your body to settle and can bring your mind and emotions along with it. We can also intentionally attend to how our bodies are reflecting and absorbing stress. We naturally become more tense, braced, or defensive and rigid when we do feel the need to be protective. Staying in these states for prolonged periods of time can start to exacerbate the discomfort of stress through just aches and pains in our body. It can make other body functions a little harder, such as sleep or digestion. Our mind and body are interconnected, so tending to our bodies is also a way we can look after our mind. Moving your body is an important way that you can support your physical, emotional, and mental health. A key to gain the most benefit is to bring your attention and action together. This means being intentional and really paying attention to the present moment. So examples could be starting at the top of your body and moving down, tensing and releasing parts of your body. When we're already carrying stress and tension, sometimes when we intensify it a little bit more, then we're able to release it and let some of it go. So let's do one of these together. I'll invite you to focus on your shoulders. So tense them a little bit more first. So you might pull them up as high as you can, pull your arms in close to your body and squeeze for a few seconds. Maybe even do your face at the same time. Hold that for a few seconds and then release your shoulders and exhale at the same time. And you might notice that it feels like your tension lets down just a little bit more. It's this kind of activity you can move your way through your whole body, focusing on one muscle area at a time. It can be really beneficial. Dynamic stretching is another kind of movement that can help support our body to release stress. Dynamic stretching is referring to moving your body through its broadest range of motion. So I can show you with my wrists that in any area where you can move, like a joint, your neck, your wrists, your arms, your shoulders, your hips, your ankles, just slowly paying attention and moving your body through its biggest range of motion that is comfortable, not pushing past any pain or discomfort. But this can really help your body just release and kind of let go of some tension and help support us to pay attention to how we might be carrying stress. Rhythm. Moving with rhythm is very regulating. So even simple activities like walking or running or stretching, whether this is outside or walking or running in place in your home, can be a form of tapping into just rhythm in our body. We can also add other senses to bring in rhythm, such as the sound of music that also has rhythm. That this can deepen and make the movement more enjoyable. So this might be using drums, instruments, or just your own hands and body to create sound and rhythm to help us move and feel some joy. I'll mention the image on your screen, I think, is a great example of this and a bit inspirational. This is an image from February from a hospital in China where there's two medical workers who were performing their version of Tchaikovsky's Swan Lake ballet. And they were doing this for 6 coronavirus patients who had recovered and were being discharged from the hospital. And so they were using movement to encourage them and celebrate this shift in their experience. And it's encouraging, I think, to us all. So let's keep moving. And this crisis will also move. As we move into how to manage our thoughts and our minds, remembering that there's these 3 important antidotes to fear and anxiety that can help us do this. I think of curiosity, creativity and play, and humor and joy as important antidotes to keep in mind that help counter and buffer the impact of fear and anxiety. When we can intentionally engage with these states, it actively reduces our internal experience of stress and anxiety and helps quell fear and builds lasting resilience, even when these feelings may return. So let's talk about each one briefly. The picture on your screen is of a Mohawk woman, a traditional dancer, singer, and drummer, Kawanotes Sedalia Fazio. I hope I pronounced her name correctly. And she's sharing a song for healing and posted this on Facebook, and then many others responded and shared more. I wanted to share this as just one of countless examples of expressions of creativity and connection to culture that we are witnessing around us during this pandemic. In your own life, tapping into your own creativity in any way allows your emotions and actions to come together and helps move them through. This may simply be through doing crafts, cooking in your kitchen, organizing a closet. Perhaps it's doing some kind of art or writing. Engaging in any activity that has a beginning and an end point is also just really helpful in such times of uncertainty. Completing a task, coloring a picture, doing a puzzle. This gives a helpful, different experience. It deepens our adaptability just through engaging with something new while we are calmer and feeling a little bit of joy. This is an important healing experience in the mind and body at times like this. Also, if we spend time in humor and playfulness, this directly has a calming effect on our nervous system and shifts our bodies and minds toward health. Here in parts of Canada, we're still at the tail end of winter. So like this family making use of the sticky March snow, this is a picture of their virus snow monster from March 24th that was shared on different news outlets. So being active, finding humor in our joint battle against this coronavirus. The importance of play is so relevant for all of us, no matter what our age. As Stuart Brown says, those who play rarely become brittle in the face of stress or lose the healing capacity for humor. So I encourage you to spend time tapping into what brings you joy, enjoying others' expressions of joy, or through your own actions. I've spoken with some people this week who feel guilty about that, like they have to stay locked into the seriousness of the pandemic. Although, of course, we want to stay informed and compassionate toward the reality, we can balance this in a responsible way by tending to our own mental health and sparking joyful moments while also staying vigilant with our part to take this seriously with proper steps to protect ourselves and our communities. The second antidote to fear and anxiety is curiosity, and this always goes along with creativity. We can also use curiosity to help directly manage when stress and anxiety get hold of our thinking. Here's where it's important that we don't need to believe everything we think. We all have that tendency to take our thoughts as truth because they can be very convincing. But our thoughts are just thoughts. They come and they go. When they become infused with anxiety, they can grow and multiply and feel like they do take over. If we can bring curiosity and awareness to the thoughts that are running through our minds, we can gain perspective and use our thoughts to help us move out from under them when they're increasing our anxiety. So, for example, it's really helpful to, just like we said with emotions, to also notice and identify or perhaps label our thoughts. For example, what if becomes a very common beginning of a thought for many people during stressful times. We might be pulled into thinking about worst case scenarios. So really paying attention to the stories that you're telling yourself. This is often what amplifies our anxiety. It's how we're making meaning of it and how we're narrating it to ourselves in our own mind or perhaps to each other. So we can use a skill of reality checking to check in with these thoughts and first of all, notice and name What are the thoughts we're having? Perhaps label fear or worry, just to notice that that's what's running through your mind. Asking ourselves some reality checking questions, such as, is this actually true? And how do I know it? So that we can be discerning about what do we really need to pay attention to, and when is our worry and fear trying to protect us by amplifying the scariness of the thought. This can help us slow down our thoughts and pay attention to what parts are true and what parts might not be true. And this can help start to shrink the power of the fearful thoughts. Then we can use the power of our thinking mind to actually do some problem solving, to think about what steps can I take? What is actually in my control? And there might be some information gathering, there might be some planning we can do, or it also might be steps using some of the prior strategies to actually move away from the focus on these thoughts. So taking back the reins a little bit of managing and turning down the volume on some of our thoughts. With a little perspective that we can manage our thoughts, there are some additional steps then that we can take. We can limit and manage our attention. So we can limit how much news and information you're taking in right now, as I mentioned earlier. For most of us, current situation is not the kind of emergency where we actually need hourly updates. We maybe want to be informed each day since there are so many changes that are happening. But if you can decide for yourself, how often do you actually need to be updated? Perhaps it's just once a day. Choose a reliable source for information and get your updates from there at a set time. Try to resist watching every possible newscast where they'll be repeating the stories and the statistics over and over. We can also choose the time to do this. As mentioned earlier, in today's society, we can access information 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But if you can make a choice to set some boundaries and parameters around this, and perhaps for those you're caring for in your home, this can help us kind of mitigate and have some more choice over the impact. The time and rhythm of this, of course, it will be unique to you. But I'll suggest that earlier in the day often may be better than late in the evening or just before you go to bed. Especially if you know you or a family member struggles with sleeping or resting at night. Having fresh messages about the crisis or about how it's impacting other people is not always helpful as we try to move into resting. We can also then have some choice about how we focus our intention of what we do with the information we're receiving. So intentionally plan how to shift your attention after you get updated information or have a conversation with someone about COVID-19. Once you've taken the time to absorb the information, perhaps doing some planning or making some phone calls, whatever it is you need to do, responsibly do to be taking care of your life, then you can use some of the strategies we've already discussed to try to shift your intention and take a break. Engage your senses, move your body, do a playful or creative activity. This can be in small ways like taking a shower, going outside, or opening a window to breathe in some fresh air. If you struggle to shift your attention, we can also use strategies to work more directly with our worries and ask ourselves some more reasonable questions. For example, the question, what is probable, is often helpful. We can distinguish between what is possible, and our anxiety becomes very good at convincing us of all kinds of catastrophic and terrible things that might be possible. But if we follow that up with, and what is actually probable, given the evidence that we have and the information we can gather, that can help us then focus in on the steps that we can take and where we can have some choice and control. So as one possible example, a conversation I had earlier this week was with someone who's over 65, worries that they're in a high-risk category, and they've been listening to all the stories on television about older individuals who are getting severely ill and possibly even dying. So as we talked this through, this person was able to name their worry, recognize that their worry was telling them things like, I am over 65 and many people are getting very seriously ill. And this is true. Their worry was also telling them, I am going to die from this. And we were able to look at that and say, well, that's not necessarily true. It's possible, but it may not be probable when we look at the rest of their life. Their worry was also telling them there's nothing that anyone can do about this, and feeling very helpless. This is also not true. And so we were able to talk it through and come up with a more reasonable thought. So this individual ended up with, and we wrote this down, that she was able to say, I'm over 65 and many people in my age category are getting more seriously ill. That is true, and it's important that we're honest. She was also able to then say, many people my age are also not sick and are able to stay healthy. And this is also true. And then to focus on what she can do, to work with what's probable. So then she was able to focus on, I can follow precautions, I can ask my family and friends for help, and I am more likely to be okay. So this helped shift her thoughts into a more probable, realistic realm that helped her just manage the intensity. We can help each other to build this mental strength by having these conversations with ourselves and with each other. I often say it's kind of like working out at the gym a little bit. We need to exercise these mental muscles to have these reasonable conversations with fear and anxiety, because they can easily pull us to the extremes. I want to offer a few specific encouragements for supporting children during this time. I've spoken with many overwhelmed parents this last week or two, and of course, parents and caregivers know that their children are hearing and absorbing the tension around them. And parents and caregivers are managing their own stress as well. So here are just some reminders, and there are so many good sources of information on this available online as well. First of all, recognize that it's important with our children to also acknowledge their fears. So just like we talked about with our own thoughts and feelings, it's important we're honest and realistic. So with children, to be honest and age appropriate in terms of the kind of information and the amount of information we're giving them, but to recognize that they are understanding that something is happening and they may be picking up on other people's tension. Helping children manage how much information they are taking in and if they are seeing the news or hearing it from other people. A helpful way to manage this is, if it's possible, is for the adults in your household to be the ones to take in the news, to listen to the news updates, and then convey it to the children so that it can be in the context of your relationship and you can manage the pacing and the imagery that they're exposed to. Your children may want to, and you may want them to be watching news with you or reading online and learning how to take in information. So these can be really helpful opportunities to help them think about and learn what are credible sources, where do we want to get our news from, and how can we discern sometimes different things we might be hearing in different places. These are actually incredibly helpful cognitive skills that you're helping support in your children and can help them learn and build real-time strategies to manage the stress. It's also, I think, important for adults and parents to be real and honest with their children in terms of your own experience. Of course, you want to try to find the balance. You know that your children are looking to you and will take their cue from you as to how intense and how scary things are. However, at the same time, you may very often have your own emotions, and it's also important to just model being able to have emotions, and then we can practice coping with them. So it's okay to be real with your own emotions. Of course, if you can use some of the strategies we've talked about to be as settled as you can, and you can model that to your children. So helping them move into emotions, there might be times we get overwhelmed or not be sure what to do. And then we can manage our emotions and notice how they can move through. This gives children the message that emotions are emotions. They don't need to be scary. We don't need to be scared of them. And we can be thoughtful about how do we respond to them. And we can also get through this together. Using the quality of curiosity we've talked about is a wonderful way to support children. So getting curious with them. When it comes to what information to share, I always encourage adults or parents to start with asking children, first of all, what are they already hearing and thinking about themselves? This way you can follow their lead a little bit as to where are they going in their own minds, what are they worrying about, rather than necessarily adding on more information. So if you hear what their own questions are or hear what their own stories are they're telling themselves, then that guides you to respond with facts, and you can use developmentally appropriate language and examples to help them make sense of their own fantasies, their worries, and their beliefs that they're forming. The goal is we want to avoid encouraging increasingly frightening fantasies. And children will tend to rely on their on their imagination if they aren't getting information. So sometimes if we withhold information, it can be a little more stressful for children because they'll make up stories for themselves to make sense of what's going on. So if we tell them the truth the best that we can in age-appropriate ways, and at the same time acknowledging when we don't know the answers, this is actually a very helpful response to children. What's most important is that you're available, you're present, and even if you don't know the answers, it's your connection with them and just having the opportunity to talk it through or play it through that will help them make sense of everything. So key is your presence and attention. Finding simple activities as well to help engage their senses and their awareness and manage the amount of time you're spending talking about the crisis and then being able to engage in other activities. And the last thing I really want to encourage, and this is true for all of us, no matter what age, but again, is paying attention to routine. We are creatures that do best with some routine. We can vary a little bit as to how much we all like, but generally speaking, this is helpful for, again, all of us. So certainly with children, keeping regular activities going as much as you can. I've heard lots of great stories of parents who are figuring out how to do some schoolwork at home and move through their day and try to find activities, and their kids telling them that they still want recess. And so I've heard some parents go online or find a recording of a bell that sounds like a school bell and using that to still have recess and take regular times, and that's actually helping their kids kind of feel like there's a little bit of normalcy even while their day-to-day lives are very different. Having meals and playtime and bathing and doing different things that you would normally be doing, keeping some routine to that or even doing it at some of the same times will also help promote some sense of stability even while things are changing. And again, engaging children in activities that you may be trying to do, chores around the home, but helping them know what they can do. This also promotes their sense of self-efficacy and a sense of some choice. I want to come back then to the central key for all of us in this is this sense of connection. Recognizing the common humanity experience of increased disconnection right now that is so stressful and so widespread, but that we're all in this together. If we can keep that distinction clear for ourselves, that even while we do need to have more physical distance between us as people for safety, we can absolutely stay socially connected and in community emotionally, virtually, and in our minds and spirits. This also includes our relationship and connection with ourself as well as with other people. With yourself, I'd encourage you to think about what helps you stay as grounded as possible, that allows you to stay patient and compassionate towards yourself. When we're able to do this, this puts us in the frame of mind that allows us to take in and absorb information as we need to, but also to stay connected and to be able to take in the support of others, even if we're needing to do it in different ways while we're physically separate. This also allows us to be more open to be able to offer that back and support other people. So you may think about things like, how can you stay connected with nature or with your own sense of spirituality, whatever that means for you. This may be through ceremony, through actions. It may be through getting outside, feeling your senses and connecting to a sense of a bigger world around you. Again, I'd encourage you to think about engaging in goal-oriented tasks or hobbies. This can connect with your own sense of self-efficacy and being able to see some things accomplished, see some things finished, can be really soothing during a time when there's so much unknown and so much we don't have control over. want to remind you again to the importance of giving yourself permission to shift our focus sometimes into things that are playful and joyful, and deepening our sense of curiosity and compassion. And of course, the importance of finding ways to tangibly build a sense of social connection, even during times of physical distancing. We are all probably aware of how important technology has become in our lives generally, and perhaps even more intensely during this time. My own mother, who's 90 years old almost, has learnt to use video conferencing in just these last weeks so that she's able to join all of us, all her children who are spread across this country, on weekly Sunday video calls. I'm so encouraged and inspired by her. So like this image on your screen, this is from just March 16th of this year, one of those first stories that hit the news outlets of a son finding a safe way to visit his father who's in a care home. And images like this and stories like this, I think, have been encouraging us all to think about how can we get creative about finding ways to adapt and make sure we're staying socially connected. A reminder I've heard several people say that I think is helpful also is to remember that even if our interactions with people are small or might seem mundane, or like we don't have anything new to share because we aren't doing anything different in our day-to-day lives but staying at home, but that these still small interactions are still so important. It's often about the connection of hearing the voice, perhaps seeing the face if that's possible, is often what's more important even than the specific words that we share. This also gives us the opportunity to express appreciation, gratitude, letting people know if we are needing help. For some people, this time of being more physically in place might mean that their lives become a little bit less safe, whether it's in their own emotional health or in their relationships. So reaching out, being aware of those in our community that may need different kinds of social connection and encouragement during this time is so important. Thinking about how do we take care of each other. Finally, I want to offer you some possible reflection questions to help you notice and be making meaning of this experience as it is going along. Often when we are enduring something difficult, we become focused on survival, and we may need to wait till later to really absorb and understand it. Because this current situation is persisting over a prolonged period of time, if we can be attending to this along the way, it will help us all be digesting and adapting to the situation as we go, and will buffer the longer-term impacts of this experience. So these are some possible questions that may support this. You may want to pause the video to look at these questions, or take these questions one at a time. And I encourage you to choose the ones that fit for you and let go of any that don't. My intention here is that this is about encouraging you to slow down and reflect on perhaps some of the meaning that is emerging for you as you are going through this time with everyone else around the world, and also being able to acknowledge the emotions that might come along with it for you. So the questions I'm offering are as follows. What is the most curious thing for you about this current situation? What are you learning to do that you never thought you'd be doing? What do you notice that you are appreciating about the people around you? And this might be the people that you know in your close circles. And perhaps it's about people you don't know, that you're seeing on the news, that you're seeing in social media or online, or just that you're hearing about through other conversations. What are you respecting and appreciating about yourself? What are you grateful for, even amidst all this stress? And finally, what is this experience teaching you about your own resilience? Thank you for taking the time to consider, learn, and engage in these healing steps together. I really believe that by turning our attention also to our mental and emotional health during this time, that we are supporting our collective physical well-being through this crisis. So just like that group of trees on the screen, we may all be bent and reshaped a bit or a lot by this experience. But as Jack Saul says in his book, Collective Trauma, Collective Healing, recognizing and strengthening the adaptive resilience in families and communities promotes collective recovery. We are all in this together. Please be safe, take care, and be kind to yourself and to others. See you all again soon. Before you go, I will just mention these additional ways to find resources and support during this time from Crisis and Trauma Resource Institute. If you visit our website, you will see that we have many options for online training. We're still able to offer all of our workshops, and we have many webinars through an online platform. We are still organizing on-location training where we can adapt and organize online versions of our workshops or adaptations of our webinars for your specific group or community. We also have many resources on our website, such as blogs where you can read and learn steps and strategies and just hear encouragements in many different areas on many different topics. So I encourage you to check that out. And we have an increasing number of free resources in the form of handouts or worksheets, different kinds of reading materials, and visuals that you can find. I encourage you, if you'd like to receive more information from us, to connect with us in a variety of ways. Thank you again for taking this time, and I wish you all well.